Before discussing how gratitude compels us, we should perhaps discuss this abundant universe. Next slide. That's important because inspirations from which Unitarian Universalism creates our living tradition with wonder and spirituality include direct experience with transcending mystery and wonder, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance and reason and results of science, and spiritual teachings of a nature-centered religion that celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with its rhythms. And with that somber and serious-minded introduction said, let's talk about aliens from outer space. Which is not such a leap in logic. Thanksgiving is a time to gather with people and pets who make life worth celebrating. It's okay to spend Thanksgiving alone, but it reminds me of a story about the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Enrico Fermi visiting Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. His fellow physicists were talking during lunch about reports of flying saucers and feasibility of faster-than-light travel, and Fermi blurts out this question: but where is everybody? And he hypothesizes that on the probability of Earth-like planets and probability of life given at Earth and probability of humans given life and the likely rise and duration of high technology and so on, Fermi concludes that we ought to have been visited by aliens long ago and many times over. So, where is it? Are we alone in an otherwise abundant universe? That's a lot to digest over lunch, and since the 1950s, scientists have wondered about the Fermi paradox. Astronomer Frank Drake split the question into more manageable bite-sized factors. He listed the variables needed to know how to predict how hard it's going to be to detect extraterrestrial life. Now, the usefulness of this Drake equation is not in the solving, but in considering all the various concepts when asking questions of life beyond the world. So it's not a to-do list for astrobiologists. I would use the equation to explain when I was a planetarium director at the South Florida Science Museum. And you probably noticed I've included it in your order of service if you want to follow along and see the factors of the Drake equation. Figure out how many stars are born in our galaxy per year. Figure out how many of those stars have planets. Figure out how many of those planets could support life. Figure out how many of the planets that could support actually do support life. Figure out how often life evolves into intelligent life. Figure out how often intelligent life develops radio communication that we could detect. And figure out how long the average intelligent civilization keeps its radio equipment working. The Drake equation can't promise an answer, but it can help us simplify the question. And to simplify the Drake equation, let's use the simple story of Miguel Gat's Pool. Miguel Gat's Pool was written in 1947. It's a children's book written and illustrated by Dr. Seuss. And in the story, a boy named Marco imagines a wide variety of fantastic fish that could be swimming in the pond of which he is fishing. Marco holds out hope, saying, oh, the sea is so full of a number of fish. If a fellow is patient, he might get his wish. How many stars? How big is Miguel Gat's Pool? Is it connected to one of those underground brooks? How many of those stars have planets? Well, how many of those planets could support life? What's the ratio of junk to fish in the pool? It hinges on how many worlds are in what scientists call the habitable zone. Next slide. The habitable zone is planets that are having liquid water and therefore life. And it's a narrow range. It's between boiling and freezing. It's between 0 and 100 degrees Celsius. Not too hot, not too cool. Full steam ahead for Miguel Gat's Pool. Just as soon as conditions permit, the crust of a habitable world cools, liquid water cools, and chemical compounds combine to make metabolism. If such a thing could be, it certainly would be. This past September, NASA announced the closest we have ever come to discovering life on Mars. A Martian rock showed the best evidence of past microorganisms on the red planet. McGilligot's Pool has fossils for Marco to find. However, how often does intelligent life evolve? That's hard to say because it's quite a leap, and the falls are so steep that it's dangerous to ride them. Consider fishhooks as proof of intelligence behind designing and using tools. Humans have been fishing for about 200,000 years. It could be even earlier because techniques like hand fishing or net fishing don't leave evidence like Stone Age fishhooks we've found, or cave paintings of spearfishing and harpooning. But even if humans had fished for 1 million years, fish began evolving 530 million years ago. It took hundreds of millions of years and multiple mass extinctions for microbes to evolve intelligence, from down in the mire and the muck and the murk to catch some fish who are all going glurk. And nothing in life is guaranteed. Mars is a dead world, and the dinosaurs on Earth are extinct. Where is everyone? Wiped out by an asteroid, or sterilized by solar radiation. Which brings us to the final factors in the Drake equation. How often does intelligent life develop communication we could detect? For how long do we sit with worms and wishes at McGilligot's Pool? 3 hours? 50 years? In November of 1974, a team of scientists, including Frank Drake and Carl Sagan, used the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico to send an interstellar radio message. When correctly translated into pixel graphics, the data contains a message with information on mathematics, biochemistry, astronomy, and humanity. You can see the stick figure there. In November of 2020, Arecibo telescope was slated to be decommissioned and dismantled. The telescope had been badly damaged by Hurricane Marie in 2017 and earthquakes in 2019 and 2020. For how long did we sit at McGilligot's Pool? 46 years. For how long can an intelligent civilization keep its radio equipment working? Not even a human lifetime. Where will we be in another 50 years? This abundant universe seems to have an overabundance of time and a scarcity of intelligence. Because the question never really was, where is everyone? Or are we alone? It was, do we feel welcome? In gratitude for all we have, what might the universe compel us to do, to live in solidarity with our neighbors? Which is why it's so painful to discuss events which began in Puerto Rico and Florida 500 years ago. History can be a horror show of the hate and harm that we do to each other. Between 1492 and 1504, an intelligent civilization made contact with life on the other side of an ocean. It ended in tragedy, with natives beaten, raped, and tortured for the location of imagined gold. Christopher Columbus and his crew completed 4 round-trip voyages between Spain and the Caribbean. On his first voyage, he reached the Americas, initiating the colonization of the continent and the conquest of an earthly paradise. Columbus implemented encomienda, a Spanish system that rewarded conquerors with the labor of conquered non-Christian people. Columbus wrote, "They should be good and intelligent servants, for I see that they say very quickly everything that's said to them. And I believe they would become Christians very easily, for it seemed to me they had no religion. Columbus and the colonists enslaved many of the indigenous people, including children. Thousands died in the genocide. Thousands more committed suicide rather than face oppression. Tens of thousands died of accidental exposure to diseases. The indigenous populations of the New World collapsed and were replaced largely by Europeans and Africans. Each November, we observe Native American History Month, a time to celebrate and honor the heritage, cultures, and contributions of American Indians and Alaskan Native peoples. Unfortunately, Native peoples' cultures, identities, and governments have often been treated not as part of the American fabric, but as a threat to it. Indigenous people were displaced from their ancestral homes, pressured to assimilate, and even prohibited from practicing sacred traditions. Today, that legacy still shapes Native life. A federal judge has currently paused further construction at Alligator Alcatraz in the Everglades after the Miccosukee tribe and environmental groups filed a lawsuit on the grounds that the immigrant detention facility threatens environmentally sensitive wetlands that are home to protected plants and animals and would reverse billions of dollars worth of environmental restoration. Governor DeSantis used emergency powers to take control of the site and touted the facility would cut through the standard legal process of federal immigration court to facilitate rapid deportations. Tribal leaders denounced plans to place detention field in their ancestral lands that are home to 15 traditional Miccosukee and Seminole villages and several ceremonial grounds, burial grounds, and gathering sites. Not only would the facility harm the cultural, spiritual, and historic identity of Miccosukee and Florida Seminole people, but tribal leaders have also expressed concerns that disruptions to the environment would negatively impact the ability of nearby tribes to live, hunt, fish, gather, and prey. Nationwide, Native American communities continue to face higher rates of poverty, health disparities, and environmental injustice, while the impacts of boarding schools, land dispossession, and federal assimilation policies echo across generations. Native American Heritage Month is more than a commemoration. It is a celebration of resilience, identity, and hope. It is time for all Americans to reflect, learn, and take action to ensure that Native voices and traditions continue to thrive for generations to come. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Boca Raton resides on traditional homelands and unceded territories of the Native American tribes who call Palm Beach County home. For generations, the Miccosukee and Seminoles people have lived in harmony with this landscape. Their deep knowledge, resilience, and stewardship help shape the story of the Everglades. We honor those traditions and encourage learning through partnerships grounded in respect and shared purpose. We encourage all to learn about the significance of the early inhabitants. With a collective knowledge of the past, we are inspired to live, teach, and support a future that empowers all individuals. In gratitude for all we have on this habitable world with intelligent life, what might the universe compel us to do to live justly in solidarity with our neighbors? It might share our values of interdependence. It might covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We might nurture spiritual growth and connection, build an inclusive community, work towards justice and equity, and heal the world one interaction at a time. That is the mission of our UU Fellowship. Our vision is a beloved community, welcoming all and promoting truth, spirituality, love, inclusion, compassion, and justice. Amen. So mote it be. Or as Captain Kirk of the Starship Enterprise might say, make it so. Thank you.